Hey there! Have you ever stopped and wondered how every single website you visit is actually put together? From a simple blog to a huge site like Amazon? Well, it all starts with one single fundamental language. Today we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify HTML, the skeleton that gives the entire web its shape and structure.
So, here's our game plan. First up, we'll get right to it. What is HTML really? Then, we're going to put on our architect hats and look at the blueprint of a web page. After that, we'll take a quick trip back in time to see how it all got started, figure out why it's still so incredibly important, and we'll wrap up by seeing how HTML connects with something called the DOM to make websites feel alive. All right, let's dive right in. First things first, what exactly is HTML, and what's its real job on the web?
Okay, so HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Now, the most important word in that entire phrase is markup. See, this isn't a programming language like Python or Java that does all sorts of complex logic. A markup language just describes things. It uses labels to tell the web browser, hey, this chunk of text, that's a big important heading. Or this part right here is a paragraph. It's not the brains of the operation, it's the skeleton that holds everything together in the right place.
So if HTML is the skeleton, how exactly are all the bones put together? Let's take a closer look at the actual blueprint for a really basic web page. Now, I know this might look a little codey at first glance, but trust me, it's way simpler than it seems. Think of it as just a set of nested labels. Right up at the top, that HTML part, that's just telling the browser, hey, what's coming next is modern HTML. Then you've got the HTML tag at the top and its partner at the very bottom. They act like a big container for the whole page. And these little building blocks are what we call tags. You can spot them pretty easily because of the angle brackets. And you'll notice most of them come in pairs, right? You have an opening tag like H1 and then a matching closing tag that has that little / H1. Anything you sandwich in between those two becomes that type of element. Could be text, an image, you name it. Now, inside that main HTML container, you'll always find two big sections, the head and the body. And honestly, the best way to think about this is like a book. The head is like the book's cover and its copyright page. It has all the behind-the-scenes info, the metadata like the title you see in your browser tab. The body? Well, that's the actual story. It holds everything you can actually see on the page, all the text, images, and videos. And this is why it's so important. These tags aren't just for decoration. They create real, meaningful structure. An H1 tag tells a search engine like Google, hey, this is the main topic of this page, while a P tag just says, this is a regular old paragraph. This logical structure is what makes the web readable not just for us, but for machines too. So that's how it works today, but where did it all come from? HTML wasn't just born this way. Let's take a quick look back at how it's evolved.
Back in 1991, the web was basically just digital documents. Super simple. But look how fast things changed. By 95, with HTML 2.0, you could suddenly fill out forms and submit information. That was a total game changer. Then with HTML4, we got official support for CSS, which meant websites could finally start looking good. And then came HTML5, which gave us all the stuff we take for granted today, like watching videos right in the browser without needing some weird plugin.
So, with all the fancy new technology that's come out over the years, why is good old HTML still the absolute, undisputed foundation of the web?
When you really get down to it, HTML's greatest strength is just its beautiful simplicity. It just works on every single browser, on every single device. And because it's basically just a text file, pages are super lightweight and they load fast. You don't need fancy software, you could write it in Notepad. But maybe most importantly, it was built from day one to be a team player, working perfectly with CSS for styling and JavaScript for all the cool interactive stuff.
Okay, so we've built our skeleton. We have a solid foundation. But right now, it's just a skeleton. It doesn't do anything. So for our final section, let's talk about the really exciting part. How do we make it move?
This all happens thanks to something called the Document Object Model, or just the DOM. Here's the big idea. When your browser reads your HTML file, it does this cool trick behind the scenes. It builds a live, interactive map of your page right there in its memory. And that map, with all its parts and connections, that's the DOM. It's not your static file anymore. It's a living, breathing version of it. This makes the different roles crystal clear. If HTML is the skeleton, then a language like JavaScript, well, that provides the muscles. JavaScript is what allows for action. It's what happens when you click a button and a pop-up appears, or when you see a map update itself in real time. That's all JavaScript at work.
And here's why the DOM is so critical. JavaScript can't actually read your plain HTML file directly. That would be like trying to read an architect's blueprint to make a person's arm move. It just doesn't work that way. Instead, JavaScript talks to the DOM, that live model of the page. The DOM is the essential bridge that lets JavaScript find any bone in that skeleton and tell it exactly what to do.
See, the DOM organizes the whole page into this neat tree-like structure. If we look at this table, for example, the table element is the parent of its children, the TR, or table rows, and each of those rows is the parent of its children, the TD, or data cells. This hierarchy is what gives scripts their power. It lets you write a script that can navigate this tree with incredible precision, find that one specific cell that contains the word bike, and change its content, its color, or whatever you want, all on the fly.
So there you have it. HTML is that essential first step. It is the universal, reliable, foundational skeleton of literally every page on the web. It builds the structure. But once that structure is in place, that's when the real magic can begin. So the question for you is, now that the skeleton is built, how will you bring it to life?